We have an update when it comes to Bray Wyatt possibly coming to AEW and how much it would cost All Elite Wrestling to bring the former Universal Champion into the company. We also have an update on a departure from AEW after contracts have not been renewed for a talent, and an update on maybe a spoiler for Tony Khan's big announcement tonight on Dynamite on TBS. All this and more in today's AEW news. Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there are plenty of news stories to get into in the world of All Elite Wrestling. It's Wednesday. You know what that means. It means that Dynamite is live tonight on TBS. And we're going to start off talking about Bray Wyatt, because reportedly, we have a bit of an update when it comes to the asking price for the former Universal Champion to come into the company. Now, Bray Wyatt, Wyndham Rotunda, The Fiend, whatever you want to call him, has set a very high asking price to return to WWE or join AEW, according to Dave Meltzer of the Wrestling Observer newsletter. While responding to a fan on Twitter, Meltzer noted on Tuesday that a wrestling promotion would have to shell out a lot of money to sign the former WWE champion. Meltzer also mentioned how both WWE and AEW would be interested in bringing in each other's top talents right now, and which again made me laugh because, of course, that's not really a report. This was him responding to a report about WWE's interest in bringing back FTR, which we covered earlier on today on the channel, so be sure to check that out. Now, WWE Hall of Famer Mike Rotunda, of course, father of Bray Wyatt, recently provided an update on when his two sons, Wyatt and Bo Dallas, could return to the squared circle. Quote, "They're definitely not maybe done," Rotunda said on Stories with Briscoe and Bradshaw. "I don't know. They kind of got their foot in and doing a couple of other things right now, trying to see what's available. So, maybe you'll see them back, maybe you won't. I don't know yet, but I don't want to speak for them either because I know they're trying to reach out and get some different things going." Now, at WrestleMania Access in Dallas earlier this month, WWE Hall of Famer The Undertaker said he wishes to see Bray Wyatt return home to WWE at some point. Of course, Wyatt recently held a Q&A on social media to answer questions on his wrestling future, his health, and a lot more. Since being released by WWE last July, he has been working on a horror film project along with special effects artist Jason Baker. Now, to me, the Bray Wyatt thing, would I be shocked if he went back to WWE? Honestly, no, I don't. Do I think he fits in AEW? Sure, I do. I think Bray Wyatt's a really smart guy, a really, really smart guy to the business. And I think that also he's a guy that, I think he's been hurt, honestly. I really do. I think that, he had to reinvent himself twice, essentially, 2 or 3 times in WWE. And they still messed him around and they still screwed it up. I mean, and the amount of hard work he poured into the Fiend character, whether you liked it or not, was beyond impressive. I think people forget, I really do think people forget that in 2019, right after WrestleMania 35, when the Bray Wyatt vignette started, they were the best thing going on the show. When the Fiend made his in-ring debut at SummerSlam in 2019, again, it was the best thing on the show. It was all that anyone was talking about. It was new. It was different. It was uncomfortable. His entrance at SummerSlam made people chant holy, all that kind of stuff, because it was different and it was great. And WWE, like WWE tends to do nowadays with their booking decisions, just mismanaged it. And it was, designed by committee and, so many levels of bureaucracy and bad booking decisions, losing to Goldberg, the red lights in the matches and all that kind of stuff, the Seth Rollins Hell in the Cell match, all of it just ended up with the Fiend meaning less and the storylines being so ridiculous and over the top, and it just really damaged that character that at one point was so promising, and it was such a shame. And, Bray Wyatt was on a really big contract with WWE, and I don't know if he had injuries. We don't really know truly the story of his departure, apart from probably when they were doing all those budget cuts last year, when they were trimming the fat of the talent roster and the talent budget. They looked at Bray Wyatt in the same way they probably looked at someone like Braun Strowman and said, you know what, this guy's on a really, really, really big contract. Are we getting value for money there? Now, it's slightly different, I think, to Strowman in the sense of we're not getting value for money. In terms of Wyatt, The Fiend sold a ton of merchandise, a ton, whether it was custom championships, masks, gloves, outfits, t-shirts, you name it. Just that the Fiend was just a license to print money, which again makes me think that there was something more there. So it's difficult to say if he'd returned to WWE. It really is. I wouldn't be shocked. I mentioned it in my video I did earlier today talking about WWE. Cody Rhodes returned to WWE. Steve Austin wrestled in the main event of WrestleMania this year. Anything is possible. CM Punk's wrestling, and I've just sort of got over that of being shocking as well, because I never thought I'd see that again. So anything absolutely is possible. Could I see him going to AEW? The thing is that if he's asking this very high fee, or sort of to agree to a contract and all that kind of stuff, we know AEW has a ceiling when it comes to their budget. That's why Cody Rhodes isn't there anymore. Cody Rhodes can talk about, I wanted to win the world championship, and I wanted to come home and be whole and all that kind of stuff. And ultimately, it's always going to come down to money, and it's going to come down to winning and being the champion. And I think it's no secret that CM Punk is probably on the biggest contract in AEW. Bryan Danielson is right up there as well. When all of those people signed contracts with AEW in 2019, there was only so much that the company could afford at the time. Then they got a TV deal, which they didn't get paid for. They got paid on ad revenue. But then that TV deal, because of the success of Dynamite, they actually started to get paid to produce that TV show from Warner Media. And then that allowed them, when renegotiating people coming into the company, like CM Punk and Bryan Danielson, to offer bigger contracts. Meanwhile, those people that signed on those contracts at the beginning are on a lower price point. So when Cody Rhodes' contract started to come up, even though he had a year option that AEW could have extended, he said, no, I want what CM Punk or Bryan Danielson's got. And Tony Khan says, look, I've got a budget. I can't give you that. So it's a difficult situation, and maybe, frankly, AEW just can't afford Bray Wyatt right now. Maybe it's a case of when their TV deal comes up at either if they need to negotiate at the end of the year or next year, and they get a lot more money, which is an absolute possibility, then they can start looking at people like Bray Wyatt going, yes, we can bring him in. And frankly, I've spoken about this a couple of times before when it comes to people like Johnny Gargano coming into AEW. Not coming in right now is not the worst thing in the world, because so many people have come in to AEW recently, whether it is people like Swerve Strickland, Keith Lee, Tony Storm, all those people. When you've just got so many people constantly coming through the doors, you do kind of tend to get lumped in, and they do mean less. And you have people like Keith Lee and Swerve Strickland who are great signings, and they could do great things in AEW, but as of right now, their debut was great. The moment they came out was great. The pop was great. But what are they doing right now? Not that much. And they don't feel big. They don't feel game changer. They don't really feel anything of that nature. And Wyatt certainly is a much bigger star than both of those guys, because he's achieved a hell of a lot more. And he's a proven draw and merch seller. So he's every right to ask for a high price point, a high fee. Ultimately, he will return to pro wrestling at some point. I'm fascinated to see what he does next, because he can't be the Fiend unless he goes back to WWE. And to be honest, if he went back to WWE, I'm not even sure he would want to be the Fiend. I think he would probably want to do something different. I'm sure he's got in his mind, his crazy mind, ideas of being something different if he was to go to AEW. I'm sure he's got it completely mapped out. I'm sure he had it mapped out when he left WWE or was released by WWE last year. So I do think he'll end up back in pro wrestling at some point. Is that going to be this year? Who knows? Maybe if it was AEW, it would either be, for me, he would arrive at either Double or Nothing, or he'd arrive at All Out. I don't see it at the moment. We haven't heard anything about it. I think there might have been some initial interest once he was released initially, and then Wyatt's just kind of gone, you know what, I'm taking a load of time off. And that's kind of what he's done since then. So I think all options are open. I know that Impact wanted him. If his price point is very high for AEW, whilst Impact is very well backed by Anthem, that's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. So we'll wait and see. We'll wait and see when it comes to that one. Now, a departure from AEW, Jack Evans has confirmed that he will not be returning to AEW. His contract will not be renewed. Jack Evans' time in AEW will soon be coming to an end. Now, the 22-year pro and student of both Brian Alvarez and the Hart Family Dungeon announced that his contract with AEW would not be renewed once it expired at the end of April, effectively making him a free agent. He tweeted, quote, "My time with AEW has been fun and enjoyable, but it's come to an end as I will not be re-signed when my contract ends at the end of April. I'd like to thank everyone at AEW and the AEW fans for the opportunity." In a follow-up tweet, Evans responded to two fans arguing over the nature of his departure. He was quick to offer praise for AEW in regards to letting his contract run its course as opposed to releasing him months earlier. He said, quote, "I actually think that it's something AEW should be put over for. They do keep you the full length of your contract." And again, I find it bizarre when people start to argue about this. The difference between WWE and AEW is that AEW honors their contracts and they let them run out. They'll say, look, your contract with us was for 3 years. We'll pay you for 3 years, but at the end of it, we're not going to re-sign you because we're going to go in a different direction. Now, some people will go, well, what's the difference between AEW and WWE then? Because WWE gets criticized when they let people go and all that kind of stuff. Well, it's slightly different. In the case of, say, Braun Strowman or the Good Brothers are a great example. In 2018, or 2019 rather, they signed 5-year, multi-million-dollar contracts with WWE, 5 years. And 9 months later, they're then given 90 days notice. In 90 days, your contract's going to be, we're getting you out of your contract. That's the difference. So you had, and it's never a sure thing, but you thought you had a guaranteed contract for 5 years that was going to make you and your family millions of dollars, and 9 months into it, you go, no, that's not going to happen anymore. Whereas with AEW, when you sign on the dotted line, you know, okay, that's money, that's guaranteed. That money is coming to me and maybe more if I do really well. That's the difference there. And I don't understand why people, again, can't see the discrepancy in that one. I really don't. Do I blame AEW for not picking up his contract? Jack Evans has been around for a really long time, and the stuff he can do in the ring is great. I was never big on the Jack Evans-Angelico tag team. I mean, Angelico, I believe, is still with AEW, I think. I think he was in maybe a recent episode of Dark Elevation or Dark or something like that. He's part of the Andrade family office, whatever that's worth. But he'll do well because he's a well-known name and he'll do fine on the indie scene. He did a lot of work in Mexico. I'm sure now with the pandemic, hopefully somewhat in the rearview mirror, he'll probably go back to Mexico as well. So I'm sure he'll be fine. But again, I don't understand how people can't see that discrepancy between being cut from your contract or being told in 90 days your contract is coming up. You know, we're releasing you from your contract in 90 days, or, you know, we're going to see you out for the entirety of your deal. That to me, I just don't understand. Again, ask the Good Brothers if there's a difference between that. Ask Braun Strowman, ask Bray Wyatt if there's a difference between that, because they all signed multi-year, long-term contracts with WWE for millions of dollars, only to be told just months later, oh yeah, by the way, that's not happening anymore. You're gone. That's a massive difference. That's a huge difference between what WWE and AEW does. Finally, we have an update when it comes to the announcement of Tony Khan tonight. And it must be said, like everyone else, when it was announced, Tony Khan's got a huge announcement for next week's Dynamite. You roll your eyes because you go, again, another one? How many times have we heard that? So there's lots of speculation what it will be or what it could be. I don't think it's anything to do with talent. We haven't really heard anything about talent. It's likely to be business related, whether it comes to Ring of Honor, a streaming service, or possibly New Japan Pro Wrestling, because a new report has revealed a possible spoiler on Tony Khan's huge announcement for tonight's episode of AEW Dynamite on TBS. Now, in a recent edition of the Super J-Cast, it was speculated that this could be a joint show with New Japan Pro Wrestling on Thursday, June 23rd. On the latest episode of the Sunday Night's Main Event podcast, Dave Meltzer of the Wrestling Observer discussed the possibility of this show being an announcement. He said, quote, "I heard the rumors of a New Japan AEW show, and the only thing I can say is that I asked and it wasn't denied. It wasn't confirmed, and they're not going to confirm to me the surprise, so that leaves me with one on the table as a potential surprise, because if they're not doing that show, I believe I would have been told we're not doing that show. So I think there's smoke to that fire." Meltzer added some other possibilities for Tony Khan's announcement, saying, quote, "The streaming deal, we know he's working on that. Obviously, he's got to work on a distribution deal for Ring of Honor as well. This past weekend, of course, Sinclair Broadcast Group aired the final episode of Ring of Honor television on their station, so a distribution deal for the company may be the option that makes the most sense." Look, when it comes to Dave Meltzer talking about AEW, you have to take everything with a pinch of salt, because if Tony Khan tells him not to say something, he'll say it because he won't say it rather because they're good friends. I think the fact that he's openly speculating on the New Japan AEW show leads me to think it probably isn't that. We do know, of course, that the announcement was made, was it last week, that AEW episodes are now airing on New Japan World in Japan, which is a big deal for them. So that is a possibility. That could have been a bit of a hint as to what's to come. Not only have we agreed that deal, but we're also going to be doing a joint show that's going to be on, New Japan World, and it's also going to be airing on TBS or something like that. That's definitely a possibility. So I wouldn't be shocked when it comes to that. And if it was a proper New Japan versus AEW card, where you could do like Okada versus CM Punk and Naito versus Bryan Danielson, that's exciting. That's very exciting. Whether or not we'll actually see that, I don't know. A streaming announcement is absolutely a possibility considering the merger of Warner Media with Discovery recently. And whilst there's a lot going on with Warner Media and Discovery at the moment, that might have been sort of, we'll announce it after the merger to sort of show you what we're doing for AEW going forward. And of course, look, the Ring of Honor one's absolutely likely as well, considering the past distribution deal for Ring of Honor TV has just ended. It makes sense to announce what the new one would be. If you said, what do you think it's likely to be? I would probably lead in maybe to the Ring of Honor one. I think that maybe is more likely. But again, those discussions might have been difficult to do because of the merger of Warner Media with Discovery too. So I don't know. The New Japan one is definitely a possibility because that announcement was made last week when it comes to AEW and New Japan World. So I could see this AEW versus New Japan event being shown on there as well. We'll see. We'll see. And of course, we'll cover it here on the channel once we do get an update on it. But anyway, guys, let me know your thoughts on today's AEW news stories in the comment section below. Be sure to like and subscribe to Wrestle News 365, and I'll speak with you again very, very soon. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.